Leave Ukraine. That's the message our State Department is sending to Americans, any American living in Ukraine. President Biden is also considering deploying United States forces to Eastern Europe to deter a possible Russian invasion.
Well, the president continues the high-stakes game of diplomacy. Meanwhile, the United States is helping to shore up Ukraine's defenses in case the talks fail. CBN's Brody Carter brings us the latest on this escalating crisis.
With growing fears that a Russian invasion is imminent, the U.S. State Department is telling the families of U.S. diplomats in Ukraine to leave the country. This as the Biden administration weighs sending U.S. forces to our NATO allies in the region.
If a single additional Russian force goes into Ukraine in an aggressive way, as I said, that would trigger a swift, a severe, and a united response from us.
More than 100,000 Russian troops are believed to be along the Ukraine-Russia border, including to its neighbor to the north, Belarus. The British government now claiming it has intelligence that Russia is plotting to install a pro-Russian leader in Ukraine. The UK says several former Ukrainian politicians have been recruited for the measure. Russia calls it nonsense and disinformation.
It is certainly possible that the diplomacy that Russia is engaged in is simply going through the motions, and it won't affect their ultimate decision about whether to invade or in some other way intervene or not in Ukraine.
As diplomatic talks continue, another shipment of U.S. military aid arrived in Ukraine, including 90 tons of ammunition and anti-tank missiles. NATO countries are also sending military aid. Sunday, lawmakers pushing for stronger sanctions and military aid to deter Putin.
We need to be very aggressive in pushing back against President Putin, whether that's in the form of sanctions, as well as continuing to equip our Ukrainian friends with not only defensive capabilities, but also offensive weapons.
Representative Mike McCall, the top Republican on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, warns that the world is watching the U.S. reaction.
This is not just about Ukraine. It's about China. It's about President Xi and Taiwan. It's about the Ayatollah and the bomb. It's about North Korea that just fired off 2 missiles.
Over the weekend, White House officials said President Biden might send several thousand U.S. troops in addition to warships and aircraft to NATO allies in Eastern Europe. The latest Trafalgar poll shows nearly 85% of Americans believe America should have a limited involvement if Russia invades Ukraine. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Well, CBN's George Thomas has been to Ukraine and Russia, and he joins us now for his eyewitness account. So, George, weigh in on the UK intelligence report. Do you think, and do your contacts think, that this is likely?
Yeah, speaking to my contacts over the weekend, both in Kyiv as well as in Moscow, this is a very unlikely scenario. I mean, obviously, Russia has had these kinds of operations, not just around its neighboring countries, but all over the world, where it seeks to destabilize, influence governments and policies vis-a-vis its own policies in Moscow. But, you know, remember the last time that Moscow tried to have a Putin man in Kyiv, in the way of Viktor Yanukovych, he was duly overthrown by the Ukrainians. And so, sure, Russia has for years tried to influence, continues to influence Ukraine. It's a major country within its orbit, and has been trying to influence that country so far with not a lot of positive reaction. But the idea of trying to overthrow the country short of a complete occupation is not possible.
All right, well, let's talk about rallying the international community. You would think the current administration would be able to do that. This is obvious aggression against a sovereign nation. Why can't we put together an international coalition like we did against Saddam Hussein? So it seems we can't even keep NATO. Yesterday, Germany cautioned about the impact of sanctions. We can't seem to form an international coalition against this.
Yeah, partly because Ukraine is not a member of NATO, even though they made this written deal 30-plus years ago that the United States, Great Britain and Russia, in essence, signed an agreement saying that if Ukraine would hand over its massive nuclear weapons stockpile, that the United States, along with NATO, would come to its rescue in any military invasion or incursion into the country. What we saw back in 2014 when the Russians walked into Luhansk as well as in the Donbass region, the United States as well as NATO did nothing. The big issue here is that, and really President Biden alluded to this last week during his press conference, that NATO is not on the same page when it comes to responding to Russia, primarily because Russia, the European Union, gets about 40%, Gordon, you know this very well, gets about 40% of its oil and natural gas from Russia. Germany gets 50% of its natural gas. And so that is why Germany, the German government said over the weekend, listen, let's cool it on the idea of sanctions against Russia because of the pipelines that flow from Russia, primarily through Ukraine to the rest of Europe. So sanctioning the energy industry could be catastrophic for the EU, but also you have asset managers here in the United States that have invested a lot of money in Russia's banking system, and there's some talk about sanctioning the various banking industries and the financial markets, the ability for Russia to operate on the financial markets. So, you know, asset managers are also concerned because of the huge investments that they have made equally.
Is Putin just playing, I guess, a classic chess game? The Russians are quite good at chess, and he sees all of this. He sees that the international banking community is too tightly woven together. You can't unravel it. He sees that Europe's economy is completely dependent on Russia for energy. And so is that emboldening him to act right now?
Absolutely, Gordon. And you see the evidence of this back in 2004 when Russia invaded Georgia, when it invaded the eastern part of Ukraine and then subsequently took Crimea. So clearly they know that NATO as well as the United States, there's so much in terms of the financial, the web that is connected with Europe as well as with Russia. But as speaking to my sources in Ukraine, especially in the eastern part of the country, they said to me this weekend, please let the United States know that this is not really about sanctions. This is not about energy and about access to the financial markets. This is about freedom. And what he said to me, and this is, mind you, this is a pastor who has over the last 8 years living in the Donbass region, has, along with members of his church and his children, they have been digging trenches for the last 8 years in this part of eastern Ukraine, ready for any potential invasion, further invasion, incursion into the eastern part of the country. And he said to me this weekend, he said, George, remind the Americans that this is ultimately about freedom. Why? Because since the fall of the Soviet Union, Ukraine has blossomed. It has been a stability of democracy, religious freedom, economic freedom, political freedom. And right next door is quite the opposite. It is ruled by an authoritarian dictator who realizes that the images he sees coming out of Ukraine, of a free, democratic Ukraine, is a threat to his own authoritarian regime. And the Russians are yearning, he says, for the same kind of freedom that the Ukrainians enjoy. And incidentally, Vladimir Putin, back in June of 2021, he sent a letter to every single member of the Russian armed forces. And he said to them, he said that he saw this as Russia, in essence, Russia and Ukraine are not two separate nations. He sees a wall that has emerged in recent years between Russia and Ukraine, between parts of the same historical and spiritual space. And he says it is a common calamity and a tragedy. As you know, Gordon, this for Russia, Ukraine is a heartbeat for the greater aspirations of Russia.
All right. Well, George, thanks for the insight. Thanks for joining us. It looks like we're going to turn into standing on the sidelines in this. Russia has absolute military authority over the air, and so whatever invasion or war, it'll be over fairly quickly. But then it turns into a guerrilla war. And so what's the long game for Russia here on an invasion? Do you really want to occupy Ukraine with an armed population? A lot of arms have gone into Ukraine, small arms, since that invasion to take over the Crimea. They're not going to have an easy time on a long-term occupation.